Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Ireland once again and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys seem to be a relatively new addition to the Irish beer scene. Their beers have had very good write-ups so far from what I can see, and it seems that they like to try and make new takes on really old school styles actually, so definitely quite cool to finally get around to trying a beer from them. But yeah, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've had several times before, but it's not a style that you find brewed all that commonly among more modern craft breweries. So this one should hopefully make for a very interesting review. I'm certainly curious to see how it turns out. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Randalstown in County Antrim near Ballymena in Northern Ireland, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Modest Beer. So this one is simply called Oatmeal Stout. It comes in at 5.2% ABV, and I think you know what style this one is. So yeah, since this is an Irish beer, a couple of shout outs that we should make in this video. First and foremost to Paul Rogers of Dalriada Imports. It's thanks to him that you guys have been able to enjoy a little bit of an Irish mini series of reviews here on the channel. He runs an import company and imports Irish craft beer over to Scotland, and he's now starting to export over to England as well, actually starting to expand a little bit down there. So if you're an owner of a beer shop in Scotland or England and you want to sell some Irish craft beer, then he is the man to talk to. I'll put the link to his Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that in the video description for you below, so make sure you check him out. A couple of shout outs as well to some Irish beer tubing colleagues. First off to Thomas McCarthy of Thomas Window Beer, lovely guy, really nice channel there, and also Brendan Sewell of Views on Brews. As I say, both very nice guys, very knowledgeable on their beer, and they're reviewing the Irish stuff a lot more regularly than me, of course. So if that's your thing, definitely go and check out their channels, and you know, very nice guys. You'll see them on my hangouts every so often actually, although I've not done a hangout in quite a wee while actually, just been a little bit too busy for it. But make sure you go and check out their channels. I'll put the links to those in the video description for you below as well. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and just see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Modest Beer. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Irish beers that I've reviewed for you. That includes beers both from the North and from the Republic, and we'll hopefully be able to add to that again, hopefully in the very near future. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Modest Beer. So Modest Beer are originally from Holywood in County Down, which is to the northeast of Belfast, and the company was founded by Chris Morris. So Chris has a background as a chartered accountant and a tax advisor, and he still does this job in addition to running the brewery as a kind of side venture, I guess we could say. But Chris was first introduced to beer by a friend who was an avid camera member, and he cites a time that they tried a flight of all Irish beer at the Northern Lights bar in Belfast as where it all began. So he was a big fan of rugby, but he ruptured his ACL, anterior cruciate ligament, if I'm remembering the abbreviation properly. And so when he did this, he couldn't play anymore, and he had time for another hobby, and he started homebrewing as a result of this back in about 2010. So after supplying the beer for a friend's wedding back in 2018, he began to look more into kind of founding a commercial company. So he went on to gain his IBD General Brewing Certificate in 2019 and just took it from there. So the brewery was originally based in a converted garage next to Chris's family home in Holywood, and he brewed there from 2019 and was producing around 30,000 litres per year in the garage. So these days they brew their beer at the Getter Brood Brewery, which is called Our Brewery, and you'll find this in Randalstown in County Antrim, just to the south of Ballymena, and they produce around 60,000 litres of beer per year there at the moment. But as of February 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 20 different kinds of beer, and they are looking to develop more recipes over the next little while. So yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Modest Beer for the moment. They are still a very new brewery to the Irish beer scene, as I've mentioned, and yeah, I'm sure in the future we will have a little bit more to say about these guys. But thank you as well to Chris for providing the information for the history section of this video. I emailed him a couple of months back actually to get this, but it has taken me a wee while to get around to reviewing this beer. But of course, since it's a stout, it will last in the can for a little bit actually. But yeah, thank you again to Chris for providing all that information. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Modest Beer for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, it's got one of these shiny surfaces on it that the camera hates, of course, although this camera is a lot better than my last one, but you can see it's quite nice and simple there. And I do like the thing here, you've got the nice kind of fawn coloured head and the dark stout sort of thing. But apparently this was a limited edition beer, which is kind of cool, and it tells you the malt and hop profile on the back of it too, which is nice. It's a 440ml can, incidentally. I don't know how much this would cost because Paul gifted me this beer to review, of course, to help promote the Irish beer scene. So yeah, I really don't know what this would cost. So if you're watching from Ireland, do let me know what this beer would cost. But yeah, the hops in this one are Fuggles, classic English hop for porters and stouts and things like that. Not a great fan of it in golden ales. It's really not very nice in golden ales because of the kind of ashy character it has. But the malt base in this one is Maris Otter, Naked Oats, Amber Malt, Brown Malt, Pale Chocolate, Light Crystal and Carafa 3. And the yeast is a Sanders yeast. But it tells you a little bit here as well. It says, "We've fond memories of sitting in Nana's kitchen on a Sunday lunchtime watching the old girl sinking pints of stout while a forgotten roast burns to a crisp behind her." So yeah, pretty cool. But it also has on the side here, "Preserve your modesty, keep refrigerated." And that is what we've done with this beer. There you go. That is quite nice. The only time it's really been out of the fridge, I think, is when I've brought it on the plane over here to Sweden. So yeah, this is potentially the most far travelled can of Modest Beer so far. I don't know, I'm filming this review for you on the 17th of February 2022, so maybe at this point, this here in Lund in Sweden, this is the furthest a Modest Beer can has ever gone. But like we said earlier, a 5.2% oatmeal stout, this one should be quite nice. I've not had a low ABV stout in quite some time actually. Normally I only really drink the kind of Imperials actually, but yeah, you don't see all that many of them over here in Sweden. Most of the Imperial stouts you get are the kind of big beasts. So yeah, that's not my fault. But yeah, 5.2% oatmeal stout, this one. I'm very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. Yeah, Maris Otter. Very, very nice malt base, this one. So yeah, anyway. Well, that head has disappeared very, very quickly. I did not expect that. So, as you can see, when the beer poured, it had about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head. But as you can see, that has disappeared just to leave a little bit of a ring around the edge of the glass there. And there's really not a lot to it. But one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the surface there. But other than that, there's not really too much going on in this one. But yeah, in terms of colour, this one's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood, which is exactly what you would expect from a stout. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. In this one, it's most likely the Carafa that's giving it, the Carafa and the Pale Chocolate actually, that will be giving it most of its very dark colour like this. But the length of the wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelize, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. I'm not 100% sure about stouts if they have a slightly longer boil than normal, but the standard boil time is 90 minutes or so. But yeah, I think the way with this one, it's actually very, very dark for its ABV. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put into the beer will also affect the colour. But when it comes to a stout of any kind, it's quite hard to affect the colour when it's got these very, very dark malts in it. But in terms of what you would expect from appearance, I'm not really surprised with this one. This is exactly how you would expect a stout beer to appear. So yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one, in terms of its appearance. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Nothing else we really need to say about this beer in terms of appearance then, but as I say, very curious to see what the aroma of this one is going to have in store for us. Oh, now that does smell pretty nice, actually. Yeah. First impression of this is that it's actually got a lot more aroma to it than I have experienced. I mean, the thing I would compare this to, it is an Irish beer, so obviously the thing that comes to mind would be something like Murphy's or Guinness. But as an oatmeal stout, I think that's actually a little bit more common in England than in Ireland, actually. I'm sure, I'm not 100% sure about that, actually. I forget whether Guinness is an oatmeal or a milk stout or exactly what it is. But, you know, this one's got a lot of really nice aroma to it. For a 5.2%, there's a lot of stuff going on in here. So yeah, I think this one, with such a complex malt bill to it, I think this one could actually turn out to be really interesting in terms of flavour. But yeah, first impression of it is the malt base, it's got a bit of roastiness to it, it's got some really nice sweetness in there, there's a wee bit of hoppy character, and it gives you just a wee touch of fruitiness as well. It's got everything you'd want from a low ABV stout. So yeah, it's interesting. So let's try and break the aroma down for you a little bit then and explain it a wee bit more in depth. Describe it a wee bit more in depth. My English is getting bad these days because I'm using Swedish more and more. But yeah, so backbone of this beer then, it's got a lovely little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust to it. I would suspect that this comes from the carafa. Carafa's got a really distinctive aroma in that sense. So yeah, you get a nice little bit of a kind of roasty, toasty bread crust to it. There's a little bit of a kind of brown bready, sort of German rye bready vibe to it. Again, I suspect this will come from the carafa. But yeah, that is very nice for sure. Yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, wee bit of a kind of brown bready German rye bread sort of thing in there. And then on top of that, you can smell some of the chocolate malt for sure. So the chocolate malt, it's kind of interesting. Toward the front of the nose, you're getting a kind of slightly sweeter note out of it. And I guess the oats are going to help with that a little bit as well, just smoothing that all out. But you do get a wee bit of a more kind of roasty and bitter chocolate, like a, you know, coming out towards the back of the nose. So we'll see how that comes out in the flavour, because you will get a little bit more of it. There's definitely a wee touch of a kind of brown sugary character. There's definitely a wee bit more of that kind of brown sugary character to this one as well. So yeah, some nice kind of caramelly, definitely some nice sort of caramelly notes to it. Wee bit of a toasty brown sugar as well, which is quite interesting. And some McVitie's biscuit, McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. It's the Maris Otter that's going to give you that, and I guess the amber malt and the brown malt are going to contribute to that as well. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, a lot of nice kind of brown German rye bread sort of things coming out of it. It's also got a wee bit of a kind of sweet caramel in there, a roasty, toasty, a little bit of a roasty, toasty brown sugar as well. And yeah, a wee bit of a biscuity character. So there's a lot of things going on in this one. Lovely aroma, actually, I have to say. So a big thumbs up from me on the malty side of things. Yeasty wise, don't know if there's too much to report in that. I think it is just a little bit more of a kind of brown, doughy, bready sort of thing that you're getting out of this. But yeah, on the malty side of things, it is certainly very, very nice. Yeah. Maybe one or two very slight woody and nutty undertones to it, but with a dark beer like this, you're always going to get little things like that. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, let's look at that. So definitely for me, on the hoppy side of the beer, there's definitely a wee bit of earthiness in there. When it comes to English hops, I always find that the green component of them tends to lean towards an earthy, herbal sort of thing. So yeah, that is, that's kind of an interesting one. But on the, how would we say, on the more green part of the green component, if that makes sense. So you've got the earthiness in the back there, a wee bit of herbal character. I do get a little touch of floral note out of it, but there is a wee bit of a kind of grassiness to this one too. So that's kind of interesting. But what I'm really finding with this one, I'm surprised, the Fugo hop, you can smell just a little bit of that ashy character coming out of it. I always found that Fugo, I always used to say back in the day it smelled like cigarette ash. But when you put it in a dark beer like this and it mixes in with the malty base, you don't notice that as much. If you put Fugos into a golden ale though, it's just horrible in my opinion. I really do not like Fugos in a golden ale or an IPA. I've tried that once actually with the Brewdog Old World IPA, and that just wasn't very nice in my opinion. But Fugos is not a nice hop if you put it into a lighter beer. But when it comes to porters and stouts, I think it works really well. And for me, old school English beer is all about the porters and stouts. I'm not a great fan of the bitters. The milds I quite like. One or two of the brown ales are all right, but the golden ales I'm not a fan of. For me, classic English beer is all about that. But of course, the stout is obviously connected to Ireland in a way as well. So I'm not sure how accurate it is to talk about English stouts here, but it's certainly an English hop. So that's where I'm making the connection. But the green component of this is quite nice. Bit grassy, little tiny bit floral, but earthy and herbal at the same time. Let's look at the fruity side of the aroma then. For me, I actually get a fair little bit of black currant out of this. That's the first thing that jumps out at me, just a wee bit of a black curranty note. There is a wee tiny touch of like a slightly sharper raisin in there and a more oily blackberry, but for me, it's kind of black currant that's forming the backbone of this. I've not had a Fugal hopped beer in quite some time, so I don't know how commonplace that is for Fugals to give you these kind of red fruity notes that I'm getting out of this. But aroma wise, this is pretty nice actually. Actually, it's got a real depth of aroma to it, which is quite impressive for such a low ABV stout. But maybe that's a kind of preconception on my part, because like I said, most stouts that you'll get from the craft breweries these days are these big heavy sort of things coming in at 10+%. So an underappreciated style these days, I think. But let's have a taste of this then and see how we get on. So as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma, but this one is the Oatmeal Stout from Modest Beer in Randalstown, County Antrim, near Ballymena in Northern Ireland. Again, thank you to Paul for making this review possible. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, it's pretty nice. And I'll tell you something, the first impression I have of this one is it's actually very, very drinkable, and it's a very nice, clean and sort of smooth and silky stout to an extent. But you get a fair bit of complexity out of this the further into the aftertaste that you go. So I like that about this, definitely. So let's put the rest of it in and just see how we go. So, yeah, I like that. I do like that. Yeah, this is nice. I'm finding that the aftertaste in this is really smooth, but at the same time it just gives you a wee bit of dryness. This is a very nice stout actually. I'm going to go as far and say that if this is a limited edition, I think that's a shame. I do think that's a real shame actually, because I can see this beer, if they could produce it on a decent scale, I'm sure it would go down really well. The stout beer, the classic stout, is quite popular actually. And if you put this into pubs where Guinness is very popular, I said we've got a local brewed stout, have a taste of that. That would do well. This would actually do really, really well. So I do hope that Chris thinks about that and doesn't just make this beer a one-off, because this is solid. This is a solid low ABV stout. I like it. So, yeah, it is quite strange going back to these beers as well, because when you drink a dark beer, you always go into this and think, oh, this is going to be a big, it's going to be a big heavy bastard of a beer. But this is actually kind of remarkably drinkable. It's a bit of a, it's a little bit of a kind of throwback to a forgotten era almost, being able to drink a stout quite as easily as this. But yeah, here in Sweden, you know, you've got the Dugas stouts, the Omnipolos, and things like this, and you know the Danish stuff just over the border is crazy as well, and the Norwegian, the Amundsens, and so on. Yeah, I like this though, but let's break it down and just describe the flavour for you a wee bit more. It really, the aftertaste in this really develops very, very nicely, and it becomes a very, very smooth beer. So let's focus on the middle third of the palate then. So, middle third of the palate with this beer. Backbone, obviously, is the carafa. The carafa's just giving you a little bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. What I would say about that, though, is that it's not too well-fired in that sense. It's actually quite modest and smooth, you know, pardon the pun. I was thinking, you know, maybe mild and smooth. So, yeah, it's not too roasty and toasty in that sense, but yeah, bit of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, but at the same time quite smooth. On top of that, you get a lovely, smooth, and quite thick. You get a lovely, smooth and quite thick rye bready character out of it. So yeah, I really like how that goes together in that sense. The rye bready character that you get out of this one, which I suspect is probably from a mix of a couple of the different malts in here. You know, the amber, the brown, the Maris Otter, the crystal, the carafa, they're all going to contribute to that. And I guess the oats to an extent too. But you get this lovely, just thick, slightly oily rye bready character sitting on top of the roasty, well-fired bread crust, and that lingers into the aftertaste. It's very, very nice. And I think on top of that nice bready layer, you're getting a wee bit of the chocolate. So remember, you've got a kind of scale on your palate. So the further back on your palate you go, the more likely you are to get kind of bitter and roasty, toasty flavours. So on the back of that middle third of your palate, you get the more kind of 70-80% cocoa chocolate out of this one. But as you move further forward, it does develop and brighten up a little bit. It's not quite a milk chocolate on the front of that middle third of the palate, but it's maybe giving you like a 50% cocoa chocolate. So you can feel that the chocolate kind of brightens up as you go further forward. On top of that, there's a wee bit of a kind of oily, brown sugary kind of thing going on with this beer. So yeah, a wee bit of an oily brown sugary sort of thing. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying caramel, but I suspect that's most likely to be the amber and the brown malts kind of combining in this one. Maybe the crystal to a degree as well. But yeah, you can feel there's a wee bit of a kind of oily brown sugar in there, and as you go out from that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive, biscuity sort of thing coming out of it as well. So yeah, it is quite interesting in that sense. I think the other thing you're going to notice about this beer, before you go into the aftertaste, is that it also has it also develops just underneath the front part of the middle third of your palate. You do get one or two little woody notes out of it, and a little touch of nuttiness as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together too. Like I say, this beer really develops the further into the aftertaste that you go. It's very, very nice. It really, this is a beer. I liked it when I first tasted it, but it's growing more and more on me, if that makes sense. But I do think low ABV stouts are a little bit underappreciated these days. And as I've said, the stout obviously has a connection to Ireland, a very obvious connection. But when it comes to the old school English style beers, this is where I think it's at. You know, porters and stouts for me are where it's all about. Milds as well, but yeah, the golden ales and the bitters and stuff, just not a great fan. But yeah, this is like a classic old school Irish stout. It is a little bit, it's more like a kind of modern take on like Murphy's or Guinness or something like that, but it's got more complexity to it and it's just better. That's it. So it is like a kind of craft take on an old school kind of Irish English stout. Actually, this is very, very nice. So the elephant in the room that we've not really mentioned in all that description of the malt base is the oatmeal. So the oatmeal is going to be part of the thing. The oats, the naked oats, along with the carafa. For me, I think these are the ones that are most likely. Pale chocolate. Yeah, I think that the carafa and the naked oats are going to be the things, and the Maris Otter to an extent too. These are the three malts that will be giving you the big bready sort of thing, and the oatmeal is just making the bread feel kind of oily in a sense. That's what the oatmeal does. Oatmeal stouts are always nice and big and smooth, like this actually. But yeah, lovely, lovely malt base in this one. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then, and the more kind of yeasty side of the beer. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there, a wee bit of bread crust, but the base of the back third of the palate, yeah, slightly roasty, toasty bread crust, a wee bit of a more kind of the brown bready layer on that one is a little bit thicker. It's a wee bit more kind of oily and things like that, as I say, from the oats, from the oatmeal and the carafa and stuff like that. So yeah, bread crust underneath, bit of a thicker bready note. Oddly enough, in this beer, I don't find the bread crust and the bready notes more grainy. They're actually a bit drier and stuff in the middle third of the palate. But then on top of that, you get the yeasty character out of the beer. Now the yeasty character of the beer does have a bit of a drier bread crust around it, a bit of a thicker brown bready character in there as well. But yeah, on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller, and then as you move, it is a little bit taller. Then as you come further forward and you go into the middle third of your palate, the flavour just squashes together a wee bit more as well. So I really like how that, I do really like how that goes together in the sense. The malty side of this beer, along with the yeastiness, is done really, really nicely, and that's where the focus should be in a stout beer, of course. But let's move on to the hoppy side of things. So yeah, the hoppy side of the beer then, yeah, back corners of the palate, definitely quite a strong earthy presence to this one. As you move further forward, you can feel it gets a little bit of that ashy character that is an inherent trait of the Fugo hop. But then yeah, as you move further forward, it does become a little bit more herbal, and as you reach the kind of front corners of your palate, it's distinctly more kind of floral and aromatic in a sense. But that floral aromaticity is quite muted compared to the German hops or the more modern American and New Zealand ones, 100%. But round the front curve of the palate, there's a little bit of a lighter grassiness there, not really a zestiness to it, it is more of a kind of smooth grassiness that you're getting. So yeah, green component of this one is exactly what you would expect from Fugo hop acts. I'm never sure whether to pronounce it as Fuggles or Fugles, but anyway, the fact that there's an English hop in here is the reason I've talked about English stouts a little bit more actually. But yeah, anyway, it is an Irish stout. It's an Irish stout, this one. But yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things to round off the tasting. So yeah, border region between middle third and front third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. The base of that, front third of your palate, it is a little bit more of just a kind of brown bready sort of thing. It's the oatmeal and the brown bread which I really, really like. So yeah, oatmeal, bready oatmeal sort of base on this one. So you see a wee bit of bread crust in there. Then on top of that, there's a little bit of an oily bubble where the fruity, juicy esters roll their way out of the beer. Fugos, of course, isn't a hop that I would normally associate with fruitiness, but there is a wee bit going on in this, and the fruity side of the beer is quite similar to what we picked up in the Aroma, actually. So when you first take the beer in, I do get a wee bit of that raisiny sharpness there. So toward the back of the front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of raisiny character in there, but very quickly it kind of mellows out and it actually becomes like a very soft black currant. And then as you move further forward into the front half of the front third of your palate, there is a little bit of a more kind of oily blackberry sort of thing coming out of this one. But the blackberry really takes a back seat. For me, it's the softer kind of black currant that really lingers in this one. But of course, the further you go into the aftertaste of this beer, it's the bread crust and that kind of oily, rye bready character that comes out of this one. So yeah, it's an interesting beer, this, and it certainly has a good level of complexity when you consider it's only 5.2%. So thumbs up to Modest Beer for this. I really need to have a look at the other beers that they've done, because when I first did the Brewery Notes for this one quite a wee while ago, so I'll need to have a look at that and just see what else they've got. But yeah, a porter would be an interesting thing from these guys, and even a Scotch ale I'd be curious about if they would do that. But yeah, let's round off the review with a quick look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, it's definitely a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth. It does have a wee bit of that oily character to it, but at the same time it still feels quite clean, good quality Irish water. But yeah, good quality Irish water in this one. I think, yeah, it goes really nice to this one. In terms of IBUs, I'm not 100% sure with this. I think this might be about, maybe, it doesn't feel overly, this is one of the things I'm always a bit thingy with this, because you will get some bitterness out of the malt base in this one. I've got a feeling this is maybe about 40-ish IBUs, maybe 30 or 40 IBUs. I'm not 100% sure, because it's not big hoppy bitterness you're getting out of this one, but there is a fair little bit of bitterness from the malt base, although, yeah, you've got the earthy ashy thing from the Fugels, but then the kind of roasty toasty thing from the Carafa and stuff. So yeah, I think about 40 IBUs, but the beer does get drier and drier the further into the aftertaste that you go. Malt base, as we said, bit of dryness, bit of smoothness, and a wee touch of sweetness. The fruity side of things is kind of soft, wet, and juicy. But yeah, I do like how this goes together in a sense. So yeah, I do like this one. I like how it goes together. So it gets a thumbs up from me, but I think we can round off this review there. So yeah, this was the Oatmeal Stout from Modest Beer in Randalstown, County Antrim, near Ballymena in Northern Ireland. Once again, a big thank you to Paul from Dalriada Imports for making this review possible. We do have one more beer to review from him, and you'll see that in a few videos' time. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. So yeah, I need to try a few more beers from these guys. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Modest Beer. And I'm sure, pardon me, that we will return to these guys at some point soon. But definitely nice to try a kind of new take on the old school Irish stout. Although, yeah, a bit of an English character to it as well in a sense. But yeah, check out my social media, check out Modest Beer's social media, check out my Irish beer tubing colleagues, Brendan Sewell of Views on Brews, Thomas McCarthy of Thomas Window Beer, and of course Dalriada Imports. But most importantly, try some Irish craft beers, because there are some very, very good things out there these days, and they are starting to get out and about a little bit more, which is always nice to see. But thank you again for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.